Welcome to Shenanigans Ensue with
Mary SanGiovanni!
Hi folks, welcome to Cosmic Shenanigans. I'm Mary SanGiovanni, and we have more shenanigans of cosmic proportions to bring to you today. We have special guest Matt Wildasin back with us to talk about video games. He's from the wildly popular video game podcast Grindcast. He's a new co-host of The Horror Show with Brian Keene, and he's the author of a new collection of short stories called The Edge of Twilight, which is available on Amazon now. Again, we're going to be talking about cosmic horror video games and what we feel makes them some of the best representations of cosmic horror video games that are out there today. Yep. And, you know, maybe some of what we'd like to see in the future. Now, we talked last time about the elements of video games that we ended up discussing then after that, and what makes them Lovecraftian video games.
Right.
And a lot of them was because it borrowed from certain Lovecraftian tropes, primarily either from The Shadow over Innismouth, The Call of Cthulhu, or Pickman's Model.
Right.
Those seem to be the three go-to, you know. These, I would venture to say, a lot of these cosmic horror ones, if they're influenced by anything Lovecraftian, it's maybe the Dream Cycle series.
Yeah.
There is an element of surrealism in a lot of these games. What is the element of cosmic horror, in my opinion, in these particular games, is it's not so much a nihilistic point of view, although that does appear in some of the games.
Yeah. And
it's not so much of a case where this individual person is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. It's that the individual person is often helpless against the forces that are interacting with them. And these forces are usually, you know, interdimensional, otherworldly forces that, in a sense, reduce the main character to something insignificant in the grander scheme of things, maybe. But there's also, I think, a move in a lot of these games to very much personalize the experience. And that could just be because it's video games, but a lot of modern cosmic horror is doing this too, where it's sort of, as we said in the last show, redefining what significance means. And because it can't mean anything on a cosmic, like a macrocosmic or, you know, universal, like out in the universe, the greater scope of the universe level, it redefines significance for that character on a personal level and gives them a reason to go on.
Right.
You know, because otherwise, I think the nihilism would take over. But a lot of the cases, these games are on the list because there are ancient entities from other dimensions, really, other worlds, that alter reality in such a significant way that I think that they do fall under the category of cosmic horror. And again, Matt and I, between the two of us, have played a number of these games. So we'll start with D. You mentioned that D.
Yeah. Now, my recollection on D is very hazy because it was a game that came out like really early 90s. Like, I think it got ported to the Sega Saturn, and that's how I played it.
Gotcha.
So that gives you an idea of that, and also dates myself. I remember, like, I wanted to play this game so bad because I saw the commercials for it. Like, you play a female and you're walking around in this mansion, and I if I remember correctly, you don't exactly remember how you got there.
Okay.
And you have a lot of, like, visions and stuff like that. One of them I more vividly remember is you're in, like, a dining room, and she looks down at this bowl of soup, and it just turns to blood, and an eye rolls, like, up in it and looks at you. Yeah, like, It plays like Myst. It's like point and click.
Okay.
And you're basically unraveling the mystery of like why you're in this mansion.
Gotcha. Okay. And you can't leave, I'm assuming.
No, which is also one of those things I always thought was funny. I was like, there's a window, just smash the damn window and get the hell out of it. But, yeah, from what I remember, that's pretty much the premise of what it was. I didn't get to go too far in it because I was a much younger person back then, and
right.
I got scared at certain things like that.
See, that's
it
cool
creeped me out,
yeah.
because it was one of the first horror games that I remember getting to play. Because I finally hit like an age group that my parents were like, okay, it's fine. You can have your blood and your guts and whatever, and and to think like nowadays this wouldn't even hold like a candle to some of the stuff that you can get away with now. But
like in what's that new one? The what begins with an E? It'll come back to me later. There's a new
Evil Within.
Yes, that's it. Evil Within. Yes, where it's just that's brutal.
Yeah,
that is very brutal. That's
those games are pretty good too.
See, I'm not. I can't get past the stealth part of.
Gotcha.
I can't get past the big guy with the chainsaw.
Gotcha.
So, but you did bring up a point that I want to expand on. A lot of these games, whereas in a Lovecraftian game these would be visions,
yes,
or dreams, in a lot of the games that we're going to be talking about, it's actually a manipulation of reality. So you're never quite sure, and that seems to be a common thread in cosmic horror games. Maybe a little bit more than in cosmic horror literature, although I know I do it sometimes, and I'm sure other people do it too. But in these games, there's a lot of like manipulation of reality. There's like
especially one of the series that's on the lists we have.
Yes,
like the place that you're in itself
actually
will change itself compared to your fears or things that you have done in your life.
Yes.
So that's that's one of the reasons I always love that series. We'll get to it, but
oh, there's a lot of good ones on this one, folks. Another one that I downloaded fairly recently, I want to say it came out maybe in the last 2 years, is The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. Now, if you can imagine, it starts out with a detective who's not a drunk. We had noted that in the last episode that almost all the Lovecraftian detectives in these video games have an alcohol problem. This guy is a detective who is not a drunk. If you can imagine a cosmic horror story meets Twin Peaks, that's what this game is. This game is like a cosmic horror version of Twin Peaks. Like you go to this sort of Twin Peaks-ish kind of town.
Right.
And you have to unravel a series of mysteries that these people are kind of keeping from you, but in doing this, you're unraveling reality around you as well. Because
I see.
When you finally discover what's really going on, you discover something about yourself, which is it's kind of mind shattering. I could definitely see how it would be kind of mind shattering in this particular case, but it's very good. It's beautiful to look at. There's not a lot direction. There's not a lot of people telling you, like
so
in some games you're sort of in some games you're sort of herded in a direction. This one you could kind of wander around and be like, I'm not really sure where I'm supposed to go next. But I think it's because you can do a lot of the pieces of the story out of order. You can do them in any order you want to.
That's cool.
Whereas like in something like, say, Silent Hill, which we're going to be touching on.
Yeah.
Later on,
it's very apparent what you're supposed to do.
Yes, and the character will even say, "I don't think I'm supposed to go here yet." It'll say things like this game. You can kind of wander around in this beautiful Twin Peaks kind of town, and there's I think there's even one part where it's just weird, random stuff. Like you find an alien spaceship, and you can go and look inside it for a while, and then you can leave again. And nobody ever mentions it. I don't think it really has anything to do with the story. It's just that this ship happened to crash in the forest, and you can have your little moment, and then you move on, and you just keep. So it's weird in that Twin Peaks sort of way, and it is set, I think, in the Pacific Northwest. So it's very like a Twin Peaks kind of place, but it is cosmic horror because of this unraveling of reality, and that the power to unravel this reality is very much occult based and linked to this sort of ancient. Power,
They should have had that UFO crash into like an ice cap type area and have it surrounded by a bunch of Norwegians. Those damn dirty Norwegians.
Really want to save those crazy Swedes. One of the ones that came up on all the lists when I was doing research for this episode, one of the games that came up on all the lists is Alan Wake.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna shift this over to you and have you talk about, because I have, I think, 2 Alan Wake games, and I've never gotten past the beginning of them.
I've gotten pretty decently into the Alan Wake game, the first one.
Okay.
Now, if I'm supposed to, is this based off a King's story? Because that's something that was like lightly mentioned, I believe.
I think the character, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the character is supposed to be the kind of character that Stephen King used to write about.
So
that,
it's like an
horror writer
type of.
Yeah, moves to a small town to be, to get writing done and find solitude so he can get his book done.
Okay, so kind of like Secret
happens.
Window in a sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Mary, put the basic part of the plot is that
right.
You start the game, you're like on a barge,
right,
like on a ferry. You got your car and your wife's with you, and you're making your way over to this little town, and they put you in a cabin, which is probably one of the coolest cabins I've ever seen ever. You're just like on a little island in the middle of a lake, and there's like this wood bridge that takes you out to your cabin.
I'd like to know what writers are making that kind of money that they can afford a little place like that.
I'd also like to know the person's insurance policy for a cabin out in the...
Right. On the bridge over the lake.
But it's like you go out there, and I remember like one of the first things you have to do is get the power turned on because the generator's not working. And then, like, it just seems like as soon as that happens, everything just kind of goes to shit. Like, he goes back in, your wife's missing, you don't know what's going on. And you, venture off into the woods because you want to get back down to, like, I guess the general store of sense that, like, you checked into.
Right.
And along the way, like, you kind of just get lost because I think there's, like, a storm that was coming in. And you find out that, like, there's shadow creatures of, like, people that you interacted with in life that are, like, coming after you, and you have to shine a flashlight on them to weaken them, and then you can shoot them with a gun.
Okay.
Which I thought was a really cool
that is kind of a neat
cool gimmick.
Like your ghosts are haunting you kind of thing. Yeah.
And it plays with the idea of, like, you have to stay in light to be safe. Like, anywhere where there's light is a safe area.
Okay.
So if there are certain parts of the game where you could be in total shadow and you just see a lamppost up ahead.
Yeah.
And, you have to get to it, and your character starts, like, kind of losing it a little bit as you stay in the dark. Yeah, he panics a lot. And I thought it was a really cool concept. I have not beaten the game myself, and I know that there was a second or an expansion, I guess, off the first game that was put out.
I think I've played, because I played. I remember looking at the trailer, and he's like standing on a pier or something. And he's missing his wife, and but I seem to remember, like, I had something with, like, werewolves or something that was, like, coming after me in, like, my own backyard, and I kept dying. Like, I couldn't fight the thing off. And then I got frustrated. I've reached that age where, as much as I love video games, if I can't kill something in, like, the first 5 or 6 tries, I'm like, screw it. Just move on to something else. What do you think makes this something that people keep putting on cosmic horror lists? Because
I think it's just the idea of, like I said, I haven't beaten the game, but I feel like, to me, a lot of this stuff that's happening is in his head.
Okay.
So, like,
it's like an insanity thing.
Yeah, and that's just me guessing because I haven't completed it. But I feel like it's in his head because a lot of the things that you come across are, like, things that he recognizes,
Right.
So I feel like it has to do with something maybe in his past that he's not, ashamed of.
Right.
And for some reason, he's going through this right now in the area that he's at. I don't know why, because, like I said, I haven't beaten it. But that's my hunch. I'm not exactly sure if it's correct or not. But
that works. We're going to go with that.
Yeah.
I like that. Because there is a sense, as we mentioned, that there's a lot of... cosmic horror has taken on an element of psychological horror. Almost like psychological survival horror, really.
Yeah.
That... Lovecraftian games didn't really have, because there was no real focus on the people experiencing these things. It was more the horror of the experience as opposed to the horror of the reaction of the person.
Well, and with Lovecraft, there really was no way you could survive through some.
Right. And I think one of the issues with Insanity, and we touched on this a little bit last episode, is that they do it in a very heavy-handed, almost like black and white sort of way. There are people who can go through the worst traumas. I mean, war-torn countries and rape and cannibalism and murder and assault and violence of every type. And although there will be scars and there will be damage
they can
psychologically, they can cope and function as for the most part, regular human beings. There are plenty of people who claim to have had extreme paranormal or supernatural experiences that still function as normal people. In fact, a friend who was involved with a study years ago about people who had been abducted by aliens claimed that one of the solidifying factors in understanding the psychology of these people, one of the things that solidified to the researchers that these people were sane, was that in every other aspect of their lives, there was nothing that spoke of any kind of delusion or any kind of mental upheaval in any other way except this one experience.
They were just plain normal
They were plain normal people except for this one terrifying experience, or this repeated terrifying experience in some cases. So they weren't crazy. They're not crazy people that are reporting these kinds of things. And I think that in a lot of these Lovecraftian stories, it's like, oh my god, there are aliens. Oh my god, there are monsters. I'm going to go completely insane and lose my shit. Yeah. I can't, like a grown man who, like in the new Call of Cthulhu game, we had talked about, he was a war vet. Now, granted, he had PTSD. They say that in the game.
Yes, they do.
But he was a war vet, and I find it hard to believe that the man's going to hyperventilate going into a closet.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, I guess it's possible if some trauma in the war had to do with claustrophobia.
I kind of felt like, for that game, and I know we're not supposed to talk about it, I said to my wife as I was playing, I was like, if they wanted to make this, like him being in closets being something that scares him so bad, they could have thrown in a story that during that war he was in, he got buried alive. Yes, exactly.
I feel that anything, and people do this all the time in, serial killer stories or any kind of, a lot of horror does this, where they don't treat people who have the capacity to kill with the right psychological foundation.
Right, exactly.
Because people don't just snap and kill. Nobody really just snaps and kills people. Even in those news stories where it looked like, it's a perfectly nice person, never saw any sign of this, blah, 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 and one day they just snapped and started shooting. There's always some, whether it's purely internal, there's always something that leads up to that. And I think that one of the things I like about these cosmic horror games, as opposed to the specifically Lovecraftian games, is that these people deal with an immensely often traumatic, or at the very least confusing, set of circumstances.
Yes.
And maybe that is the madness, that they don't overreact to it, or maybe that those things happening is an indication of madness, but they hold their shit together. You know, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like that's a situation. Another one, and again, this is one I think that Matt has played that I don't believe I ever have, is Eternal Darkness.
Yes, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. Jesus. It's one of those words that, like, you say, you sound drunk right away. Like, judicial system.
Chartreuse.
Again, this was another game I played a long, long time ago. You start off as a female character in the game, and you're told that your father passed away, and you're supposed to go to his house, which is a mansion,
right,
and look over his effects, essentially, because it's going to be given away and auctioned off, or blah blah blah.
Okay.
So you go into the mansion, and then you just start kind of like looking at certain things that your father had. You come across what I'm assuming was the Necronomicon in his study. They don't flat out say it,
right?
From my recollection. Again, this is like 20 years, I think, since I played this game.
Right.
But you have flashbacks. Like, the first flashback this woman has is you go into like Roman times, and you're like a gladiator fighting his way out of this the innards of a coliseum that's overrun with like zombie type creatures.
Oh wow!
And like you go through different people's eyes and events throughout the game that tie it into the book and what your father was studying about.
So it's almost like House on the Borderlands, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Okay. See,
and,
we can fit comfortably into Cosmic Horror.
There you go.
Yeah.
The cool gimmick about this game is that the game tailored itself to mess with you, the player, as you progressed. There would be certain, like, because you have a sanity meter in the game,
right?
That actually has more of a purpose to it than just like Cthulhu remembers you drank. You certain characters could see creatures and handle it better than other characters. There are certain ones that, like, if you're getting overrun by like a couple zombie type creatures or like other monsters, you start rapidly losing your sanity. And in some instances, the game would actually like turn your TV off. But like it would all go black, but it would make it look like your TV turned off.
Oh,
you could still
that's
hear
crazy.
everything, and your controller would be still rumbling, and you're like, I gotta, what the hell, and then it will just all come back on, and everything's okay.
Yes.
And then there's other parts where like it messes with the screen's colors. It will make your controller not work. Like forward will be backwards, and yeah, it had all these really cool gimmicks to it to mess with you.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. See, I also like there's one of the Silent Hill games that I don't consider part of the canon, but it's like a remake. It's called Book of Memories.
Okay, yeah.
It's sort of to me, I always think of it as just sort of a side thing, but it's supposed to be a kind of reimagining of one
phone game.
It's the one where you can't fight the creatures; you have to run from them. Which
are you talking about? Shattered Memories?
Yes, I'm sorry. Shattered Memories. Yes, I'm sorry.
Because they did make one called Book of Something that was a phone-based game.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. It is. You're right. It's Shattered Memories.
Yeah.
It shows how much I think of it as part of the Silent Hill grouping there. But they do things similar in that, like, let's say, there's a lot of scenes where you're talking to a therapist.
Right, yeah.
And you can choose an answer to the questions your therapist asks you.
And that changes what you see in the game.
And it changes what you see in the game. So the things that you make moral decisions about, the game messes with you. And when we talk about Silent Hill, we'll talk about why they do that, but it's really kind of subtly and brilliantly done. It's the one part of that game that I liked a lot.
Yeah, I've actually played that game multiple times through because I wanted to see the changes. Because there's like 4 or 5 different changes the game can make.
Right.
And, though in the beginning, depending on what you pick, there's like a chance where you can go into a diner or a bar.
Yes, because one of the questions they ask you, and again, this was before I quit drinking, is do you drink? And if you say, and you can tailor the answer so it's like, no, I never have, or no, I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Something like that. And if you indicate that one of your vices is that you have a problem with alcohol, you'll see far more beer bottles in the street.
Yep.
You'll see signs for bars,
And the monsters will look different too.
The monsters look different. There's a sexual component.
Yeah, I remember when I went all like sexual with all my answers one time.
Yes.
I was just like, my God, they made these monsters look voluptuous. I was like,
do I really have to kill you? I mean,
it's like really in your face about it. You're like, yeah, you like women, don't you? Look at that. And you're just like, okay, well, hold on. Take it easy.
But that Eternal Darkness, that sounds cool though, because it sounds like they're trying.
Yes.
It's like an early attempt to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and not many games back then actually did stuff like that, especially on consoles.
Right. Because I think there's an AI, sophistication for changing things based on the player, which I think that makes for a great horror game because it personalizes it. Another one, and I'll admit this is another one that, like Alan Wake, I started. And for some reason never finished. And it might have been either, I think in this case it was a case of my computer couldn't run it, so it would take forever to me move anywhere, and I got frustrated. But it's Alone in the Dark.
Yeah.
Now I have to admit I have often in the past confused Alone in the Dark and Alan Wake, maybe because it's an AL thing.
Might be. Yeah. The characters kind of look similar. I mean, well, in the updated version, it kind of looks like Alan because it's like the dirty brown leather jacket look.
Right.
But like in the original, which was on PC first, your character looks really weird. It's like you kind of have like the Victorian looking like pea coat and like if I remember, he had like a pocket watch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was not like very threatening looking at all, but it was, again, another story where you're going into a mansion. Like, again,
right.
I always wanted to own a mansion in my life, but I feel like after that, I'm like, no, I don't want to. I guess there's too many rooms, and if you don't go in them long enough, this stuff just starts happening. And before you know it, you're haunted. But
it's all downhill after that.
Like, if I remember, you're a detective again, I believe, and you're going to the mansion, and stuff's, it's the play-by-play again. Weird stuff starts happening.
Right.
And it is loosely tied into Lovecraftian lore, in a sense.
Okay, all right.
It's very loosely, but it is tied into it. When they did the updates for the Dreamcast, you started looking more a little like Alan Wake. You didn't look like a...
That could be why I confused them, is that they look a lot alike.
Yeah,
characters are
you got to look up early pictures of the game, like when it was on PC. It's like the character's really funny looking. But this game was kind of considered the granddaddy of where survival horror started coming in. Now, like... Resident Evil got all the praise because it made it more accessible, I guess.
Right,
and it was more of a situation where you could identify with a character, I suppose, more than just like it being this detective guy who's in this mansion somewhere that you'll never go to.
Right, right. So it's basically like the difference between like the M.R. James ghost stories, Stephen King.
Yeah, like Resident Evil's more like your mainstream horror, and this one's more like for the pinky up, sophisticated type of person that read up on this kind of stuff. You know?
Right.
Resident Evil is like, oh, zombies bad, zombie dogs, bang, bang, bang. That's what you got to do.
If it's anything that growls at you or runs at you too fast, shoot it.
Yeah. But I mean, I recommend to a lot of people that want to play early, like survival horror, like give Alone in the Dark a try. Like, it's pretty good. I mean, you got to get used to those tank controls again, where it's just like you only move in four directions, but. It's still a good experience. Yeah, see,
my recollection of Alone in the Dark, I think, has been impinged on somewhat by the movie, which was a monster movie.
God, that movie was terrible.
But and my understanding is it's nothing like the game. Like it's more of a, and they did this eventually with Resident Evil 2. That eventually it's not a horror game; it's an action. It's game an action with monsters in it.
Yeah.
And that's not the impression I got from the games, that Alone in the Dark is...
no, they're not based in action at all. Your character literally only knows how to use a gun just from the amounts of... like, the small amounts of times he's ever had to use his gun. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's not built to be like an action star either. He's just a guy.
Just a guy. Yeah. Which is it's just kind of cool, because in a lot of these games, too... like, they'll run out of breath, They'll get tired because they're not used to running from monsters, and, and I think that's kind of cool. Again, it's something that comes up again in Silent Hill, which we're going to be talking about shortly. But what do you think is cosmic horror-esque about Alone in the Dark? Like, if you had to say, I'm putting it in this category because... Is it the nature of the monsters, maybe, or where they come from?
It's just... It has to do with the idea behind the monsters, I believe, because there's a certain point where you delve into like Egyptian lore, and then they talk about a book at a certain period of time.
Right.
They don't mention it by name per se, but they talk about this book that somebody wrote over in Egypt, and somebody found it and started reading stuff, and weird shit started happening. It's like kind of like that idea in a sense.
It's funny because somebody had asked me about the movie Evil Dead, the first one.
Yes.
Which I love. I absolutely love. In fact, I'm probably one of the few people that likes it better than the second Evil Dead. Which
I love the second one.
I know, and I do. I love the second Evil Dead, but the first one to me was... That was a horror movie.
I have a friend that the same way. I will argue with him up and down over if Evil Dead 2 is better than Evil Dead 1.
Right.
He's diehard Evil Dead 1.
Yes.
Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I feel like the second one was a little bit more polished. I don't know.
Well, the second one, I think he really kind of came into his own in terms of what he wanted to do with it. But the first one, people asked him, why don't you cover that on Cosmic Shenanigans as a cosmic horror thing? And I think that at first, I think I made sort of a perhaps snobby distinction between... they're demons, Kandarian demons, granted, but they're not. And I guess you could say technically anything from hell or wherever Kandarian demons come from, is another dimension. But to me, it struck me as more of something I'd categorize as a demon movie, a demonic possession movie, than a
with
cosmic
just
horror
like
movie.
the Necronomicon being there, because they never really mention anything like elder gods or anything like that. It's just you summon things from hell using this book.
Right, it's a grimoire essentially, as opposed to, well, I mean, I guess the Necronomicon is technically too, but it seemed maybe that there was. It wasn't quite the same kind of thing, which is why, in case anyone's curious, why I haven't covered Evil Dead as a cosmic horror movie, but I can see where people are getting that. It sounds like Alone in the Dark is similar in that respect. That there's a book, an ancient book of ancient spells about ancient creatures and monsters and gods, and sometimes that's a comfortable way of. I guess
I feel like sometimes
it's
the easy way out. I feel sometimes.
Yeah,
for
it
people.
Explains where they come from.
It's like, I'll just say the Necronomicon's in there.
Right.
It's just like, come on.
The Necronomicon's blamed for a lot of things. A lot of things. The next one is one that I debated putting in this group or in the Lovecraft group, because honestly, again, I don't remember the end of it. I remember that, though, there was a component of insanity and of otherworldly beings, and that's Amnesia.
Oh, the Dark Descent, yeah.
Yes, and I thought it was great. I mean, it's a incredibly creepy, atmospheric kind of game.
I can say it was the first. I think this game was what brought some horror games back into the limelight. Like people wanting to have AAA games made of horror,
right?
Like, because this game was the first game in a while that actually made it unsettling.
Yes.
Like, people were just like, okay, I'm creeped out. Like, genuinely creeped out at what's going on. And I think the main reason for that is your character cannot, like, he cannot defend himself. Right. You just have, like, a lamp. You need to find lamp oil.
Which goes out sometimes.
Yeah. You need to make sure you find lamp oil, and you gotta find keys. And you just gotta know how to hide. That's all you have. Right. And, like, the creatures in this game are freaky. Like, kudos to the design team. Yes. Because, like, the first ones you run across, the ones were, I don't even know what the game referred to them as, like their names, but the ones that are, like, pale humanoid creatures with the gaping mouths that just hang open. Oh, my God, like, yeah. The first time I ever ran into that, I was just like, what in the God? What the hell is that?
Well, you know, and that's the other thing, too, about a lot of these cosmic horror games. One of the distinctions in my mind, I think, between a survival horror game maybe and a cosmic horror game, another distinction that is monster specific, is that it's not a stereotypical kind of monster. It's usually something that is a gross disproportion
to something resembling real life.
Exactly. It's either a personification, although person doesn't really work here, a manifestation of a psychological sin or insecurity or something, but it's usually almost grotesque in its presentation. It's got limbs in the wrong place. It's got the big gaping mouths. Right. The kind of monsters look like they're in pain all the time.
It's
got they look like
on its head.
Yeah,
I remember that guy.
They are grotesque as opposed to a xenomorph kind of creature.
And then sometimes it's when something's there, but you can't even see it because there's that invisible monster that lives in the water in the basements.
Oh yes, and that's another, and that's another because you can
outsmart it.
Right.
But if you didn't know it was there the first time.
Oh yeah. I mean, and there are a few things as creepy as walking in that, and they've done this since then in other games where you're walking through the water in a basement. And you know something's in there with you because you can hear it. Yeah, and you're just waiting for it to pull your feet out from under you. And yeah, so yeah, Amnesia's a good one. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's one of the first games, if I remember correctly, that left you defenseless, which usually I don't like. Usually I think there's a tie to insanity when you can't defend yourself. I think you have a little bit more agency and you can keep your cool a little better if they let you find a weapon.
Well, and your character also, I believe he couldn't stare at them for too long because he would go insane as well.
Yes, because it would trigger, like, not visions, but it would trigger, like, a distortion. Yeah. Right? Some kind of distortion of reality. Which, again, I think is sort of a cosmic horror thing. You know, that you can't look on almost like you can't look on the face of the gods. Now we come to two of my favorite cosmic horror games, video games, that one of them, I think, if you've listened to prior episodes of Cosmic Shenanigans, in fact, I believe it was, I'm looking this up right now, an episode 4 of Cosmic Shenanigans, we talked at length about the first 4 Silent Hill games.
Yes. I love these games.
Oh, we definitely, yes. We'll talk about these again. Not in so much, if you want to know my feeling about the pantheon of these creatures, the pantheon of these gods and monsters, check out episode 4, where we talk at length about what I believe the religion behind these creatures is. Yeah. This has all the elements we were talking about. The Silent Hill games have all the elements we were talking about, where you have a distortion of reality, so much so that, like you said,
it's an entire town.
The entire town changes out from under you. It goes from what they call the dark version, or the blood version of this kind of place, to normal and back again. And usually this signifying indicator of that is an air raid siren.
Yes.
Which, when you've played the games long enough, yes, it is one of the most intimidating, daunting kinds of. When you hear that siren, you're like, oh shit, things are about to get real.
Yeah, the minute you hear it, like, your gut kind of sinks.
Yes,
because the first time you hear it, you don't know what the hell's going on, and then your character just wakes up, and you're in this area where it looks like metal and flesh combined together.
Yes.
And it's just, you can't see beyond the bounds of its darkness, and
right, you can't leave the town because it literally drops away. Like, there are cliffs that drop into nothingness and you can't see the bottom. There's fog everywhere. And when, after a while, and you can tell me what you think of this too, Matt. After a while, when you're in the normal version of Silent Hill, you get used to where a jump scare may or may not be.
Yeah, it does become a little predictable.
Yeah, you're never going to find anything in a mailbox. You're very rarely ever going to find anything in a car. You're never going to find anything in a dumpster. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. There's nothing under gurneys and under those sheets, which always terrified me.
If you go into a bathroom, though,
bathrooms can fuck with you.
That's a guaranteed spooky spot in Silent Hill games, is the bathroom.
Exactly, but when it switches over to the dark Silent Hill version, where literally the walls peel away and the walls are made of this like breathing flesh, the monsters in Silent Hill are tortured souls. More, they look like they're in pain, clearly. Everything. Oh yeah, everything's, and they're distorted in all kinds of horrific and often sexual ways.
That's a very heavy overtone.
And that's because of Silent Hill 2.
Which I kind of hate how they kind of kept going with that, because it was like,
right, because that was specific to that guy.
For James, that was he had sexual frustrations because of the illness that his wife took on.
Exactly, and then they just kept.
It kept going.
They just kept with it.
Like,
and
Pyramid Head was in every goddamn thing almost after that, and it's just like, stop.
Yeah, and because one of the enjoyable things about Silent Hill is that once it went to the dark version, you didn't know what to expect, because all those places that were safe before are not now.
Yeah.
Some of them would be locked. Then there'd be new rooms that opened that you couldn't get into before. The kinds of shit they would throw at you when things went dark were completely different. Like, there are scenes where, things come at you from, like, you look in the mirror and there's a thing behind you and it wasn't there before.
Yeah, I'll never forget, I think it was in 3, there's a room that you walk in and you look at the mirror and you just start seeing, like, there's a gurney behind you and it just starts kind of changing, like, to red.
Yes,
and it just starts spiderwebbing all across the floor, and then it's going up your body, and then it's like whole room's going. I was just like, this is awesome idea. Like,
yes. Or there's one, I think it's in one of the first, it might be the first or second game, where a door that you have gone in multiple times, nothing's ever happened. There's one time where you go in there and it locks behind you, and then the floor, like, these giant roach type things come pouring out of the walls and floor and then try to attack you, and there's nothing you can do. The door's locked. You can't get out. You just have to fight them off until the thing decides it's, all right, you've had enough.
Yep.
In 3, the scene on the merry-go-round where she has to fight a version of herself.
Yes.
That's terrifying. It is. I mean, the way, the originality, especially in the first 4 games, I would say, of the scenes and the monsters and that because in Silent Hill, maybe more than any of these other games, it is very much a psychological mindfuck. Silent Hill,
personally tailored for the one person that's in there.
Exactly. And there are, because we've talked about this too on the show, there are other people in Silent Hill with you, in addition to monsters. But whether they are people who are manifestations of your guilt, or other people who are stuck there because they feel guilty just like you do, is never clear.
I think it's a mixed bag.
I think it is
because
too.
in 2, you run into a woman in the very
Maria.
beginning where she's like looking for her.
Oh
husband.
yes, no, she's looking for her father.
Her father,
the dark-haired woman. Yeah, I forget her name.
Now, I believe she is actually there.
Amanda, maybe. Yes, she's actually there.
And I think she might be there for reasons similar to your own, which is why you see this person.
Right.
Now, you run into another female character later, Maria,
right,
who is essentially your wife.
Yeah, she's like the sexy version of your wife.
The version you always wanted your wife to be, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is and the implication through all these games is that Silent Hill is a real place, and the occult stuff that happens really happens, but it was brought about by the power of somebody's will and a combination of, occult magic that amplified this will. And so that when it does suck people in, it has no problem morphing to what it knows will hurt you most.
Yeah. And the thing that I think is really interesting about the whole idea of the town itself is that if you have no business with the town, you can pass right through it.
You can pass right through it and you can't see it.
It won't do anything to you. But as soon as, if it beckoned you to come there, which most of the time it does, it beckons the person to enter. You'll get the famous look where it's just like, if you try to go out where you came in, there's just cliffs.
Yes.
It broke the road away, bridges are mangled, you can't go back over, and it's just like...
you are literally isolated in a place
you don't have that... break a window and just get the hell out of the mansion. It's like, no, you're stuck there.
You are stuck there, and you are... you can do a certain amount of exploring. There is a certain amount of open worldness to it, but there is always a clear-cut goal.
Yes.
And if you try to stray too far from that clear-cut goal, the character itself will say, no, I need to go do this first.
Right. It's like, I need a key. Oh, this door's locked.
I can't leave here until I blah, blah, blah.
The other great thing I love about this series is that every character that's in it is just a normal person. Well, until they got to 5. Then they're like, oh, well, this guy's a military guy. It's like, no, you missed the point completely.
Right. In Homecoming, he's a military guy, and in the one following that, he's a convict. I like that one better than Homecoming.
I mean, if I had to choose, I guess. So I thought Downpour was kind of they really softened it up.
They have a lot.
Yeah.
And the thing too about it is that they try to incorporate an element of helplessness that they've done in other which I don't like. Like that thing that you have to outrun, that glowing light thing.
Yeah, they basically did that from Shattered Memories. Yeah. We'll have a running section. It's like, no.
I cannot stand that. That is the one part of that game that I definitely don't like. But yeah, you know what it is like you said, they went a little bit soft. Like they stopped trying to push the envelope with those games. And I think it's unfortunate because the newest one would have had incredible talent behind it. It would have had the old composer who did the first 4 games. It would have had Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
It would have had what's the cute guy from The Walking Dead?
Daryl Remus.
Yeah. He would have had him as one of the characters. It would have had an incredible amount of talent behind it, and I think it would have gotten back to the roots of what made that game scary.
I mean, the fact that when they announced it, and they were saying that Hideo Kojima was working on it, which he's the brilliant mind behind Metal Gear Solid and all that stuff. He is known for doing things with his games that just mess with people to begin with, and he's a very creative developer and video game director. He likes to leave things ambiguous. Right. And hide things and make people look for them and try to figure out code and all this kind of stuff.
I love that.
That's what he is all about. And the fact that it was he was getting together with Del Toro.
Right.
You're just you couldn't ask for a better team up.
Yeah.
To produce something like this, and we all know where that went.
Very disappointing, but.
But my original point I was trying to make about the Silent Hill series that I love is that your characters are just people.
Yes.
That just have a tragic past, and it shows because, like, in the game, you can find there's guns, there's swords, there's shotguns, machine guns, all this stuff,
chainsaws.
But you suck at using them.
Yes.
You can aim all you want, you will miss.
Right, like the chainsaw. Like, there's no way you can hit anybody the first time with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna happen. And that's they're regular people. There is a cult. But it's not a Lovecraftian cult, really. It's not an uber Christian cult, which is contradictory to one of the movies. It is a cult of its own kind of religion. And again, check out episode 4. We go into that kind of cult. And there is a pantheon of gods that these people believe in. There are ancient gods from another dimension.
In the third game, you actually give. Well, your character was supposed to give birth to one of them.
Right.
And she throws it up, which I was just like, holy crap, how do you get that past your esophagus?
Right.
And then, like, the other... That was, like, one of the messed up endings I've ever seen in a video game in a while. Like, your character throws up this... Essentially a fetus. Yes. The other character consumes it and then turns into this god. Yes. To which I was like, this is great. Like, I'm going to fight this god, and I had no bullets and killed it with a crowbar.
Right. And I also like that if you run out of bullets, you're not screwed. You don't have to start the game over, The other thing, too, about these games is that a happy ending... There's always what they call a good ending. There's a good ending, an okay ending, and a bad ending.
God, they have, 7 different endings in most of these games. And some of them are just stupid.
Yeah, some of them are silly, like the UFO ending. Yeah, some of them change the second time around. The ending will change. They do.
There's that infamous one in the second game where you go into a room and a dog is at a control board, like he's controlling everything that just happened. Yes. And then James is just like, what? I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's just weird stuff. But they never call it a happy ending. They don't call the good ending a happy ending because... The good ending, what they mean is that for this character, it is the best thing that could have happened to
him.
Right,
like you survived to whatever extent you consider it to be survival.
Right. Like, for example, in the second game, all he wanted was his wife back. There is an ending, where you can get your wife back, but it's not a good ending because it shows that psychologically you haven't moved on. Right. The good ending is learning to let her go. Yep. So there's different endings, and I like that because I feel like that's very much a cosmic horror thing. That cosmic horror stories don't always have a happy ending, but a lot of times they'll have a good ending, which is the best ending for that character, given what that character needed. Yep. Right. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more, and then I'm gonna finally let the guys go home. Okay. We're gonna do 2 more. We're gonna do The Suffering and Dead Space. Now, Dead Space I haven't played. The Suffering we both have, right?
The Suffering, again, it kind of borrows its ideas for the monsters off of kind of like what Silent Hill did. The monsters in the game are like manifestations of people that have passed away within this prison that your character's in the style of which they were executed. Yes, because there's people. There's monsters that have syringes for fingers, so they would die through lethal injection. Ones. Right? Yeah. There's one that it's like a big hulking beast that kind of has like a tank turret on its back. Yeah. Those were people that were killed from. What's that?
The gas chamber?
Not gas chamber. Gunpoint, like firing
squad. Right, yeah. Right.
They were killed by firing squad. Then there is the gas ones that spew toxic gas at you. And,
right. The electric chair ones. They have like a thing.
They have the cap on their head. Yeah. So that's a really cool idea, and the art design they took with these creatures is really cool too. The syringe ones, I think, is one that people remember the most, just because
they're terrifying.
They're very. They come at you very hardcore too.
Yes.
They don't let up. Some of the other ones will dart away. These they come at you, and they come at you in groups.
Right, and they're not like the stupid hulking brute kind. They make a horrible noise, if I remember.
It's like a clanking noise on the ground when they're running around.
Like a skittering noise because they can climb on the ceilings.
Yep.
But they also have that aspect of, like in the Silent Hill, all the Silent Hill monsters are vaguely inappropriately sexual. They are too, a little bit. They're the only ones in that game that are vaguely like that. But
yeah, because they kind of like they're bondaged in a sense.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, there's like a sense of bondage, and there's an absolutely terrifying opening scene where he finally gets Torque is the main character. He finally gets put in jail.
Goddamn name.
That's
so the time. It's time.
Yeah, and this thing flies past the jail cell, like literally, it's almost a blur, and you come to realize later it's one of these injection kinds of creatures. It comes flying past this, and it uses those needles, and it slices through the metal bars.
Yeah.
And all you see is this blur and a clink, like this like loud like metallic sound, and then your bars fall away, and you're free, and you're left to roam this, bloody carnage of a prison. It's also one of those games where the choices you make determine the ending.
Yes.
Because you are there either appropriately or inappropriately convicted of murder.
Yeah, it's suggested that you killed your family.
Right.
But it's also suggested that you were in there because you were framed.
Exactly.
For the murder.
Exactly.
So there's moments where you can try and save people, or
you let them die, or you kill them.
Or you yourself
can actively kill them. And so I went with I was a nice person. I saved everybody. I saved people.
You and I think the next time a game like this comes out, we gotta just call each other. We're like, which way are you gonna play?
Right.
All right. I'll do the opposite. That way we don't have to play this like 5 different times.
Right. And both games. I mean, I think the first one is significantly better than the second one, but they both have that same psychological component, and the idea that, and this does come up in Cosmic Horror, not as often, but it does come up that sometimes there can be such a strong psychological connection to trauma, such a strong psychological connection to the dissociation of reality that you can make that reality real.
Right.
And I think that's a legitimate Cosmic Horror aspect of something. And then the final game we're going to talk about, this one I have not played, but it is downloaded on my Steam account, is called Dead Space.
Yes.
My understanding, and you can correct me because you've played this, right?
Yes.
Is that it starts off like Alien, or it starts off like a straight up, Alien horror Event Horizon kind of situation. But what is really happening, why it is really happening, I understand is a Cosmic Horror kind of thing.
Yes. So you, I'm trying to remember, I think your character's name's Isaac. Yeah. You are an engineer, basically.
Okay.
So that's why you had like that cool looking suit. And I'm just like, in the future, that's what engineers get to wear in space. Like, sign me the fuck up. But you're called to this station because there was reports of there's things going wrong, and they're like, we need an engineer to maybe fix some stuff. And, they send you in first because you're going to see if there's things that need to be repaired. And as you're going through, just blindly walking through hallways, like nothing really happens at first. And then you have a little video communication with the people within the base and back at your ship.
Okay.
Basically, what's in there gets to the people that brought you there.
Gotcha.
And shit just goes bad, and you're essentially stuck. You have to figure out how to get to another life pod.
Okay.
To get the hell out of there.
Nice.
And the monsters within the area are, like, I would say very heavily inspired from, like, The Thing, in a sense, because they're like... they're all different shapes and sizes, and they're all just, like, fleshy, humanoidish type creatures. The first ones you'll run into are, like, they have these long, like, pointer-like arms and legs.
Okay.
And they just come, like, up at you, like... Think
like a praying mantis?
Think like space Starship Troopers, like those ones that are like black and orange, but more human looking.
Okay.
And the game introduces you to the idea of you can use your gun's like a plasma cutter, and you can sever limbs off with the gun, which, depending on how you do it, makes it a lot easier
to kill it. Yeah.
Or it makes it infinitely harder on you, because only headshots really count, in a sense.
Okay, so you can run out of ammunition?
Yeah, and the way the creatures sometimes come at you, getting headshots is like nearly impossible.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the cool things about the game, is like the whole aiming system, and it is genuinely terrifying, because the people that made the game knew how to keep you on edge the entire time. Because you can sometimes go in the rooms where there's people dead, and there's the creatures laying there. They're not dead.
Oh.
And you can just walk by, and then it just pops up and get you.
Oh, yikes.
You know, and there's areas that look like safe rooms, and they'll just fall from the ceiling. So, like, it takes all those regular conventions where you have, like, safe rooms and stuff like that, and puts a twist to it where this place isn't as safe as you think.
Right.
And you're only going to be safe as if you're in an area that has, like, armor upgrade pod or stuff like that. That's where you know. But other than that, which are very few and far between, it's the Wild West. Anything can go. And it has sections where you're actually out in space, and there's like gravity that comes into play with that and all this. So it's really fun. Like the third one, don't play. Like if you get addicted to the first game,
right?
Play the second one. Don't play the third one because again, it's just action.
Oh.
They went like Resident Evil, and it's just like shoot 'em up. Yeah.
So
microtransactions out the ass.
No. See, I don't like when they change up the formula so much that it changes what fans like about the game. And that seems to be the problem with a lot of these. Like the first, few Resident Evil ones I played, they were horror games. Now they're action games. But
thankfully, they're back to being horror again.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, good, because I've heard the new one is good.
7 is fantastic.
Okay.
It starts off kind of giving you like a Texas Chainsaw-y type thing because you're in a house with this family that eats people. And then it turns its head and it turns into a straight up first person Resident Evil game where you're finding keys, trying to find weapons and ammo and solving puzzles and all that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot better. But now about Dead Space, what is it that's cosmic horror-esque about it? Because it sounds like an Alien game.
I kind of don't remember.
But it is the why. I'm told from an online review that it's the why these things are happening.
Yeah,
so maybe it's like a portal to another dimension type thing. Or something.
I believe it. If I remember, I believe it is something like that. Kind of like in Event Horizon when Sam Neill's character had that thing where he was going to open. I can't.
Right.
It was like that sphere in that weird ass room.
Yeah, the black hole.
Yeah, he was going to use the black hole generating thing to open up a portal into another dimension. It was. I believe, if I remember, it was like scientists discovered something and they opened it, and that's why.
And that's why.
Yeah.
All right, I think that counts too. Then I mean, I'm told that it's a great game, and I would like to try it eventually. You know,
I just I always hoped Doom would go in like a more Cthulhu-like direction, because I mean, how badass would that be if like Doom guy's gonna fight Cthulhu?
Right, right.
Like the one guy who probably could actually look at it and not go insane.
But now every time I think of Doom, I think of Dwayne Johnson.
Oh God,
The Rock.
Please stop making movies off of these games.
Well, that's I mean, the only game movie that I think did
Silent
the game
Hill,
justice,
maybe
the second Silent Hill game, the second Silent Hill movie, not the first one.
I hated the second one.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I didn't think the first one. You know why? Because the first one changed the religion too much for me to.
It changed up some of the things, but I feel like it still was a decent movie in a sense, as to like, it's not like like the Doom movie where it's like there isn't any character that's actually the Doom guy, and it was just such a weirdly written movie.
Yeah,
with just pepperings of what it actually was, and it sucked so bad.
You know, I did. There were many things I like when I first went to see the first Silent Hill movie. I mean, we cheered when she found the flashlight and the radio. Like people, you could tell who the Silent Hill fans were.
Yeah,
because we're like, yes, she's got the radio and the flashlight. Now she can actually play the game.
Plus, I liked how the movie kept up the sound design, which was a huge part of Silent Hill.
Yes,
so, like some people even just love Silent Hill because of the sound and music that's used in the game, and it's fantastic. Like with the movie, especially when they had that. I can't. It's not. It wasn't a guitar that made the music, but that.
Yes.
Like when that opened just with the Columbia TriStar logo, and you're just like, "This is fucking awesome!"
Yes.
Like, this is the way you needed to do this.
You could tell. I forget the name is Gans. I think Christopher Gans was the guy. He is clearly a fan of the because he tried to be so authentic in every way, except that he thought the religion would confuse people. I guess because that was the only real drawback.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I thought the way that they made it more like this God-fearing religion.
Yeah,
like basically just a radical Christianity. I was like,
Right.
you didn't. You could have honestly left the whole cult thing very ambiguous.
Yeah.
And just be like, well, the whole time everybody's just asking, well, why are these people doing this?
Right. And the other issue too was that despite the fact that even in the games they burned Alessa, they didn't do it because they hated her. They did it because they loved her, which is
they did it because they had to.
They had to make her angry enough.
Yeah.
To be the proper vessel for the birth of this god.
But in the movie, they just burn her.
Right.
It was just like she's tainted.
Right.
And Satan essentially comes to her and goes, I'll give you this power. They don't say exactly it's Satan, but she goes, I'm mentioned by many names. It's like, well, who the hell could that be?
Right. I did disagree with that decision. But yeah, it did capture the feeling of it though. Even down to the little the set
design was amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome. They took some scenes right from the game. It was very cool. You can tell that of these cosmic horror games, that Silent Hill is
if you haven't played Silent Hill, what are you doing with your life?
Yes. You are wasting your life. And they have been digitally remastered, I understand, the first 3 of them, right?
Yeah, it's probably the easiest way to get your hands on them now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the digital remaster looks like poop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Water effects look pretty shitty. And
oh, really?
Yeah, and not all the character acting is the same. They got different people in to dub over certain voice acting. Yeah.
Really?
So if you can find the originals, go that route.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, if you haven't played them, there's 4 good games and 2 shitty ones. So go through 1 through 4. Some people don't think 4 is that great. I personally thought it was an interesting experiment. I think
it was interesting as an attempt to try something different.
Yeah, and that it was stuff. It's shown you that stuff can still even happen outside of the town itself,
right?
As long as the town needs you, to be there.
Yes, that it can influence you. And my impression too is that the town that they mentioned, I think it's like Ashfield or something.
Yeah.
Is adjacent to Silent Hill, so that Silent Hill is actually spreading.
It's screwing up its neighboring cities.
Yeah,
and stuff.
And I like that. I like that idea that in little ways it's starting to spread.
Yep. Which sadly we'll never get to. At least because I thought that was the idea of Silent Hills, is they pluralized it because it's starting to spread into other towns.
That would have been so awesome. I still hold out hope. It
would be nice if Konami just got their shit together and be like, "Hey, we screwed up.
Yes.
You two want to? We will fund this completely. Do you two want to finish this game?"
I agree. I am all for it. I will be first in line. I am really a total Silent Hill nerd. But anyway, thank you so much for having these awesome last 2 episodes in talking about cosmic horror and Lovecraftian video games. If you all enjoy Cosmic Shenanigans, you may also enjoy another show I co-host, which is The Horror Show with Brian Keene. Matt is a co-host as well. Both of them are available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. I'm not sure about iHeartRadio. We're going to include them anyway because we don't want them to feel bad. And all other platforms via the Project Entertainment Network for free. You can pick up Matt's book, Edge of Twilight, on Amazon now. And you can check out his podcast, Grindcast. And you can also pre-order my new book, which is Inside the Asylum. It's the new Kathy Ryan book on Amazon as well. As always, thank you to engineer Dave Thomas. Watch his channel most nights at twitch.tv/meteornotes. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.
See you guys.